It all started when Mr. Hartice came in and talked about the Stoutsenberger Farmstead and how we should save the farm because it's a very important part of history. Our class learned that it's important to keep history restored and to keep it living for as long as forever. We learned a lot about the Stoutsenberger farm and saw really great and exciting photos. After Mr. Hartice came to our class, Miss Stutt talked with him and we got to visit the farmstead. It was an amazing experience. We were all excited that we got to go on a Saturday.
It was really fun to be at the farm. We got to go to a playground at the Stoutsenberger farm. We got to play and run freely while we waited. Mr. Hartice told us to come under the playground.
Mr. Hartice told us the main rules about the site and what we should do on the site to be careful. Then he talked about the barn and who lived in the house. Then we started walking to the field. He talked about the crops that grew in the field and the people who worked there.
When we were walking up the trail, we saw a huge field full of grassy land, and the field was on top of a hill, so all of our legs were tired. The land was very wide and open, like somewhere that you could play and run freely.
The barn has 2 levels. The top level has grain and hay. The bottom level has animals.
Don't forget the part of the barn where they keep the farm equipment.
The barn had some moldy wood, and it was near the water for the animals to drink.
The barn was made out of stone and wood.
Stoutsenberger was a German man.
So most of the designs are German architecture.
The grain stored in the top was for eating. The hay was for the animals to eat.
At the top of the floor there was a sort of storage shed, and inside there was grain. And when he wanted grain, instead of all the grain falling out, there was a piece of wood like a sliding door with a hole. You would slide it open and some grain would fall.
The house is so old you cannot go inside the house because they don't want you to get hurt or break anything.
When you would touch the house, you would have to wear gloves because there's glass all around it.
The house was made with hand tools. It was made before the Civil War. The top of the house where I was standing was older wood. Mr. Hartice told us how to tell if the wood was made with hand tools or with machinery by looking at the saw marks.
As they gained money, they began to make a second floor.
You can tell that the site was a good choice because it is near a stream, making the soil fertile and giving a supply of fresh water.
Go ahead. Miss Todd, is that good?
Oh, yeah, that's fine.
And then, do you want to show them the toilet?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know exactly. Are they supposed to go up there?
Well, I'm just going to let them climb up the ladder, and then they can see.
Because I didn't go up there last time. So they just need to peek first. Oh, that? I don't. Looks plastic.
It is plastic, but it's weird.
Plasticky, so I'm not sure.
I think it's some kind of plastic.
Try and focus in a general area, okay? Don't keep moving around or you're not going to get much done.
Are we good enough here?
No, we're not.
No, that does not look sturdy at all. I'd love to go in that house, but...
Joey, why don't you help pick some things up? Just don't do glass because you don't have gloves.
Don't go too far, Pia. I found something. It ain't a very long thing.
Let me see.
It was plastic. Oh, it's probably plastic.
I don't know. Let me see. Whoa.
It's actually where you flush the toilet. Or a toilet is...
Do you guys want to be the first ones to look at the toilet?
Yes. Not really.
The toilet is not your average toilet. It looks like a bench with a hole in it up on a high porch. When you would use it, it would all fall into a shack-like place.
We saw an old chicken coop. It had barbed wire around it.
I want to take a picture of you guys because you look like another famous picture that I know.
We were working at the barn with pitchforks, shovels, and other tools to prevent a wet hay pile from destroying the barn by weakening the barn's structure.
After the wheelbarrow was full of hay, we had to dump it near the creek and pack it down so people wouldn't knock it down in the creek.
If we hadn't have done that, mold would have grown and destroyed the barn by weakening the structure, and the barn would have collapsed on in itself.
Like that?
Mom, can I please have my gloves? Miss Stott, we found a pipe. Wait,
I don't know if
wagon
that's going to come out of the ground.
Miss Stott, you can gloves on if you're fun.
Here you go.
Can I take my jacket off? I'm overheating. I think I got it. Yeah, I got it. You got it? Are you driving? Found this!
Yeah, that. What do you think that looks like?
A tire.
Yeah.
It's rusty.
It's an older tire, but it's not as old. It's that's. Do you think that's pre-Civil War or after the Civil War?
After. After.
I think so too.
Hey, was anybody here after the Civil War? This old rusty thing. I found a crystal. No, I found a piece of pottery.
Let's see, Sharon.
I think it might have. No, we have to put it in the cleanup bin. Hold it.
Whoa!
Be careful, Ryan.
No, Dad, it's not a piece of pottery.
What'd you find? Yes. Ryan.
Found an artifact.
Let's see.
Tile.
Cool. Very cool. Okay.
Reach in and close it out.
Oh, yeah.
Should I put it in the cleanup?
Put it in the bucket. He'll go through it all later.
An old one.
This looks like a special piece of glass.
Yeah, there's a neat design on some of the glass, isn't there?
Yeah, but
Careful, Ryan, you're awfully close to that nail. I'm not liking that.
I got it. So close.
What'd you get?
I love the fuzzy caterpillars.
So there's like this red leather plate right there.
So I'm here with Brody and Carissa, and basically I just handed them a stack of primary source documents having to do with the Stoutsenberger Farmstead, and I asked them to look them over and see what they could learn about life on the Stoutsenberger Farmstead. So here they are to talk about the process that they went through in analyzing the documents. So Brody, what did you do first?
Well, you can see we spread out all these papers over. And first we didn't have our hand lenses right here. And so we had to do a lot of looking, and it took us a while. But we had to once we got out our hand lenses, we figured out a lot. So we were just writing over what we thought the words were and over the documents and all that.
Okay. Carissa, do you have anything to add to what Brody said?
It is really hard to read because if you can see this, that's because people back then would do a lot of cursive. So
here are some facts we learned from the documents. John Stoutsenberger died in 1837. Maria Stoutsenberger needed to prove that she was John Stoutsenberger's wife when he was dead, so that she could get the pension that he earned when he was a drummer boy during the Revolutionary War.
When my mom and I were out in Lovettsville Union Cemetery and New Jerusalem Lutheran Church Cemetery rubbing the paper, it was very hot, like 80 degrees Fahrenheit. I found both of the graves, and we ended up making several copies of the graves to make sure everyone could make out a lot of the words between the three.
While in the attempt to trace the letters of the stone, we found ourselves a few snags. The rubbing took many attempts because of the struggle to understand the words you are looking at now. In fact, we were actually able to use the Promethean board to look at the actual graves and trace the words.
I could not identify the words very well, probably because of the age of the grave. I could read a few words like George Ritchie. I could figure out his birthday and dates of death. Words very hard to read. Some rubbings were much clearer. Stoutsenberger was probably the easiest word to make out.
The words are hard to see because the tombstones are so old and eroded over time that they scraped off. I believe he was 15 when he joined the U.S. Continental Army. George Ritchie, as I read, lived during the Civil War and was with the Confederacy. He was a prisoner because he accelerated the death of Union soldiers by stomping on them. One troop came on his hands and knees to George's house, and George kicked him to death, shouting, "If they didn't already kill you, then I will."
We learned lots of cool facts, like life long ago was not as easy as our life now. I really want to go again and help save the farmstead. We thank Miss Dutt and Mr. Hartes.